Okay, fucking Iran.
Talked to you on the show as well around this period. You posted on X, Donald Trump's now launched an illegal war of aggression against Iran. The risk of an absolute catastrophe is very high and the benefits are non-existent. Worst of all, he did it on behalf of a foreign government against a country who posed no threat to us. Now, as things stand, it looks increasingly like Trump brought all this to an end with targeting 3 nuclear strikes with the B-2 bunker buster bombs. We don't know the scale of the damage, but even the Iranians are saying significant. And the war appears to be now at a ceasefire stage after 12 days, which is being kept in hell, which I'm astonished by. Trump has no desire, made it clear, to put any boots on the ground or to affect any America-driven regime change. I think he was misinterpreted when he first talked about that. I think he meant an organic regime change possibly happening a la Syria in December, but we don't know. But that was my take on what he said. But he certainly clarified that now as he doesn't want Americans to force it. What is actually wrong with what has happened and unfurled here? I mean, given what the Atomic Agency report made clear, that the Iranians have been enriching uranium from a safe civilian usage of 3.5–4% to 60% in rapid time, and they were hiding information, they were obfuscating, they weren't allowing proper, full, transparent inspections, and so on. You know, is there really anything ideologically wrong, putting aside Gaza, putting aside everything else, purely on the apparently imminent threat? By imminent, I mean in the next few months, that the Iranians would have had an ability to weaponize their uranium quite quickly to 90% and potentially create up to 10 nuclear bombs, having assured the world they wouldn't do that. They are supporting and promoting every terror group going from Hezbollah to the Houthis to Hamas to destroy Israel. If you're Israel, why would you not preemptively strike? And if you're the United States and you've got the leaders of the Iranian regime saying death to America and encouraging that chant, why would you also not want to neutralize the nuclear sites?
Well, let me start by saying that I really am just absolutely thrilled that, number one, that the Iranians gave that warning and that their response was kind of like, one of those Iranian responses where we want to seem tough, but we sure do want to make sure we don't kill any Americans that could get us destroyed. And I'm thrilled that Donald Trump took that off ramp and immediately started pushing a ceasefire. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But thank God that he did that, because and I think all sane people around the world should be thankful that he took that off ramp and this didn't lead to a catastrophe. But no, I mean, I think that I think essentially your question is all flawed. I mean, even in the IAEA report that you're referring to, they also reiterated that Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb and that they have not made the decision to start pursuing one. And so
why are they... Let's think about how these interviews happen, right? Like, let's say you go to Iran, you go to investigate if they have a nuclear bomb, right? You go to Iran, you're like, hey, your uranium was at 3%. Why is it at 60% now? Like, oh, like, it's just like, like reserves, like, just like in case something happens, like we want to have, like, we want to be safe, kids. But like 60%, why not 12%? Like, 60%. It's like, are you planning on making nuclear weapons? It's like, no, come on, no, like, no, like, why would we do that? Okay, they're not planning on making nuclear weapons. Yeah, they just made 60% for no reason. Great. Fantastic. Intense fucking investigation.
So there was no imminent threat. Listen, even Benjamin Netanyahu...
Do you want to wait for the imminent threat? I'm sorry, like, why would you wait for an imminent threat? Does this person just not care about preservation at all? Or is he just like that fucking retarded? You have a regime known to not give a shit about its own civilians and children, okay, supporting multiple terrorist organizations that, by the way, he agrees on. He knows that they do, okay? Even though he's like, proxies, okay, like, Hezbollah is a proxy, Hamas is a proxy, so like, whatever that means, right? But he knows they support them. Houthis, proxy, or whatever, right? But he agrees that Iran supports them, so it's like, whatever, but they're not proxy. Iran just supports their cause, gives them a ton of money, trains them, gives them weapons, tells them when to make attacks. But it's not a proxy, okay? It's just moral support, right? But you're okay with them developing almost weapon-grade uranium, right? Almost ready for like nuclear weapons, right? When the fucking investigation shows that they're at 60%. When they only need 3%. Okay, fuck it. They only need 5%. They only need 6%. They could have 10%. And nobody would be like, you know what? Okay, fine. Like reserves. 60%. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm gonna take them at their word. They are not going to develop nuclear weapons. I'm just gonna trust them. I'm gonna trust this very trustworthy regime. Well, we should have waited until they had them. Like, we want to live... We don't want to live in a what-if world. We want to live in the, we're fucked world.
in his interview with Brett Baer, who always appears, as you know, has a long history of just making up how long the Iranians are to developing a nuke. Even he said maybe a year, 13 months. But the point is that in order for them to do that, they would have had to kick the inspectors out. And then it would have taken them at least a matter of years to develop a nuclear bomb if they had made the political decision to start.
Because they can't hide anything from inspectors. Ever. Mobsters are able to fucking tax evade for fucking years. But inspectors, they literally check every nook and cranny inside of a country.
Seeking one, and then it would have taken them
do you think
a
they
while
should have one?
My point.
Do you think Iran should have a nuclear bomb?
No, I don't think anybody should have nuclear weapons.
Right, but do you think in particular Iran?
It's not the question. Obviously, there shouldn't be nuclear weapons at all. Okay, we have nuclear weapons. Do you think Iran should have one?
Should have one, given how much it supports terrorist groups.
Well, I will answer that question. Let me just say the point.
Just say no. Just say no. You don't need to explain. Just say no.
I was making there is just that there was no imminent threat. We had more than enough time to do what the American legal system requires in this situation, which is that you bring it to Congress so that the people theoretically can have a debate through their representatives.
But actually, as you know, I saw AOC making that argument, and I replied to her, almost every military strike ordered by an American president this century has been done without prior congressional approval.
Yep.
Yeah, but what type of argument is that, Pierce? Every war since World War II has been fought undeclared. That doesn't mean it's the proper.
But the argument is
that
if you go for congressional,
why are you applying the standard now? Is the question. Why now is the standard? Like, why now you're applying this standard?
Approval, inevitably it will leak out and you lose the element of surprise.
Yeah, okay, but then the argument also is that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the founders very intentionally placed war-making power in the Congress because they didn't want it to be, they didn't want the president to have the war-making powers of a king. Now,
yeah, but listen, it can make military strikes as well. It just can't declare war.
Yeah, well, there's some debate about that amongst constitutional scholars, but yes, but that refers to like an imminent threat, which by all accounts this wasn't. Now, listen, I don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I think that everything that U.S. but basically all of U.S. and Israeli foreign policy seems to have been geared around incentivizing them to make one for about as long as I've been alive, which I think is very counterproductive. But I will say that I think there's a couple thoughts here.
Iran is incentivized to create nuclear weapons for this reason. The U.S. is stronger than us, and they're not our friends. Israel is stronger than us, then they're not our friends. Therefore, we need nuclear weapons. It's their fault. Everything he's spinning it's everybody else's fault, except of the fucking Islamic regime. Is this guy getting paid at this point? But like he's like one of the more reasonable voices. Well, from the way I see it, I understand why Iran would want a nuclear weapon. I don't give a fuck if you understand. I can understand why Iran would use children to sweep mines. It's not about understanding them. Are you on the side of Iran or on the side of the US? Do you think for the US it's a good thing that Iran has nuclear weapons? Or can have nuclear weapons? I don't care if you understand the other side. Every side thinks they're correct in a conflict. I'm sure Germany thought they're on the right side too in World War II. What the fuck, man? It's like, I can understand that, you know what? I can understand Hitler a bit. I can understand him a bit, you know? Like, maybe he had a point. Whose side are you on, you fucking degenerate?
That I think people should really consider. And number one, that I don't, I still think that Donald Trump, as great as it is that he walked us back from this, I think it was totally reckless and wrong for him to launch it to begin with. But think about this. The whole foundational claim for the Hawks' justification about Iran getting a nuclear, because obviously lots of really, really bad people have had nuclear weapons in the history of the world, and that's not a good thing, but like Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong and like, today, current Vladimir Putin, China, I mean, there's lots of really bad regimes that have nuclear weapons.
So what's one more? What's one more? By the way, those regimes, if the US could stop them from making nuclear weapons, the US would stop them. US was at no position to stop them from making nuclear weapons, so it didn't. That is the difference. This is why they have nuclear weapons, because there wasn't a force capable enough to stop them from doing so. If they could stop them, they would. So this whole argument falls flat on its face by the fact that it's like, well, look at all these terrible regimes. They have nuclear weapons. What's one more? This like literally falls flat on its face because US and Israel can stop Iran from making nuclear weapons.
It's almost never been on the table among serious people that we ought to launch a war of aggression and choice because the regime. But the claim here is that Iran is so crazy. They're these religious fundamentalists, and self-preservation simply isn't a motivating factor for them, and therefore they can't be allowed to get it.
You wouldn't dispute that. You wouldn't dispute though the central argument that Israel has about it, which is that Iran has been the main sponsor for Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah for a number of years, all of whom are terror groups wedded to eliminating Israel. You wouldn't dispute that.
I don't dispute that they have supported those groups, and I don't dispute that that's the.
So isn't that right there the existential threat to Israel?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but Israel. No, listen. If Israel is the only country in the Middle East who secretly has nuclear weapons and is not a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they also funded Hamas, so I'm sorry, I do not think it's a legitimate justification for them to launch a.
Okay, first of all, what does it really matter in this argument? I can understand the argument of like Israel shouldn't have nuclear weapons. That's fine. I'm totally for it. I don't think anyone should have nuclear weapons, as he said. Sure, and yeah, Israel, honestly, in my opinion, probably like not the best position to have nuclear weapons because it is one of the most likely to use them. Okay, realistically speaking. However, what does that have to do with what was being said? Do you like again? And he's so quick to be like, I understand why Iran would want nuclear weapons. Yet, when you're bringing the argument of like, do you understand the argument why Israel wouldn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons? I don't want to hear this argument from somebody who secretly developed nuclear weapons. What?
War because they claim someone else is making nukes when they're not, and also they also funded Hamas or something like that. So no.
Can I respond to this now? Can I respond to this now? First of all, this claim that there's no evidence that the regime is making nukes is totally false. It's totally false. We know that they've enriched to 60%, which means they're 90% of the way there. There's no reason to have anything above 3 to 5% for civilian use. Everybody understands that 60%, the only purpose of it is for nuclear weapons. Now, for a long time, the US and the Western world have been trying.
Look at Dave. Look at Dave.
Understands that 60%, the only purpose of it is for nuclear weapons. Now, for a long time.
Nope. Dave, what? Okay, yeah, grok.com. I wonder what purpose can there be for enriching uranium to 60% and beyond? Nuclear weapons. Yeah, I'm sure the research reactors. Naval propulsion. Yeah, Iran has a very, very, like, okay, so it has no space application, naval power, non-existent, and research reactors. Achieving high neutron fluxes for scientific experiments, medical isotopes, production, and material testing. Yeah, I think I'm a bit skeptical that they really care about medical isotopes or, well, scientific experiments in terms of nuclear weapons, yeah. Enriching to 60% significant because it's close to the threshold for weapons-grade material, about 90%. While 60% enrichment has civilian uses, it raises proliferation risks as further enrichment to weapons-grade levels become easier. In a country that only needs 3% enriched uranium for civilian use, why would such a country go for 60% and above and beyond? That was what I'm gonna say, but whatever. Country only require 3% for civilian use, typically for commercial nuclear power reactors and nuclear weapons. Okay, okay, so still the research. Naval and space. Strategic hedging. Country might pursue high enrichment as a geopolitical strategy, signaling nuclear capability without explicitly building weapons. Okay, this is like, sure, deterrent. Okay, we really want our enemies to have deterrent against us. Like, fucking brilliant. Okay. Or mismanagement. In rare cases, a country might pursue higher enrichment due to poor planning, lack of technical expertise, or misaligned priorities. Oh, it's just by mistake. By mistake, they just went for more. For a country with civilian needs met 30% enrichment or 60% or higher is likely driven by strategic motives. So, and most plausibly a nuclear weapons program. Okay. The strategic motives, deterrent. Great. We really want our enemies to have deterrent. And nuclear weapons. Fantastic. Okay. But, but Dave disagrees.
For civilian use. Everybody understands that 60%, the only purpose of it is for nuclear weapons. Now, for a long time, the US and the Western world...
Nope, not everybody agrees. Nope. Mr. Common Sense Dave Smith here does not agree.
Have been trying to delay the breakout time. That was the whole point of the JCPOA and all of these other deals, was that we know that they're months away, right? That's why you keep saying, oh, they've been months away for years, right? But they've been trying to extend the breakout time from months away to at least a year away for the past 10 to 15 years. So actually,
30 years, but yeah, I checked this before on Grok, and there has been a deal in place since about 92, I think 95 actually, a deal in place and attacks and nuclear scientists mysteriously dying for the last 30 years in Iran. Okay? Every time they're months away, they get delayed for some reason. Oh, Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying that they're months away since 92, and it's like, what, has nothing happened ever since 92? Like, there were no fucking attacks, there's no assassinations attempt, there's no deals being done. It's like, oh, we are months away. US comes, makes a deal. Okay, I want you to like dismantle this whole project. Okay, that you would have to build it from the grounds up if this deal falls through. Okay, this is the deal. And we give you this. Alright, cool. Dismantle it, and now deal is over. Okay, now we have to start over again. It's gonna take like fucking 3 years, and then it's like you approach the 3 years, and it's like, they're months away from making a nuclear weapons. Alright, time to make a deal.
Everybody is fully aware that the regime has always been months away from developing nuclear weapons. Now, second of all, again, it's making these moral equivalencies between the United States or different countries or Israel or whoever having nuclear capabilities. What you're talking about
I don't even care about the moral equivalency. Whose side are you on? This is not a fair fight. You don't want a fair fight. Fair fight is for sports. This is war. People's lives depends on. Do you want a fair fight with Iran if you're the US? Why the fuck would you want a fair fight with Iran if you're the US? Why the fuck would you want a fair fight with anyone in war? You want to fight, you win. You want to pick your battles where you win them. You don't want to pick your battles where you have a good chance of losing, a 50-50 chance to lose. Or even if you win, have massive fucking losses. This is not a fucking sport.
Is a regime whose fundamental motto, its entire basis of existence, is death to Israel and death to the United States. That is what it stands for. That is what its leaders chant on a daily basis. That is what school children have to chant in the playground before they start school every day. Death to America, death to Israel. Every day, their strategy is how do we destroy the United States and how do we destroy Israel? Now, when you have an expansionist ideology that has eschatological beliefs about the end of the world and the end of Israel, and the desire is to proliferate and export its ideology of velayat al-faqih, not just to the Middle East, but to the entire world, and you say, I don't understand what's the difference between them having nukes and others having nukes, that is just profoundly misguided. Second of all, I
didn't say that.
No, you said you don't. Technically, he's right. He didn't say that. However, you insinuated that by bringing up that Israel has nukes for no other reason than to say Israel has nukes.
Second of all, this isn't just about the threat of the nukes themselves. I don't think anyone's thinking to themselves that that the Islamic Republic's just going to drop a nuke as soon as it has one. The whole point of it reaching nuclear capabilities is that it becomes a deterrent state. Once it becomes a deterrent state, how are you going to deter its bad behaviors? How are you going to prevent its alliances with its regional proxies? How are you going to prevent more October 7s?
Bro, I love her. I heard her once before, but I love her. She actually has a brain on her shoulders, which is rare for a woman. I'm sorry, I'm kidding. But yes, fucking thank you. Fucking the most obvious thing here. If you're on one side, you want to make sure the other side has no way to fight you.
When everything you try to do to sanction them and contain them is met with, what are you going to do? We've got nukes. And it also prevents the containment of the region, because now UAE, Egypt, all of these other countries are so under threat that they also have to develop nuclear capabilities. So it is actually allowing them to get that far. That would be the cause of regional and global instability. So it's just preposterous to say that we should have just done nothing about that or got into another deal that just kicked the can down the road again. We are in the position that we are in because nobody contained this.
Because we've been kicking the can down the road. This can will keep getting kicked. Somebody needs to pick it up and throw it in the trash. Okay, you need to stop this fucking can from moving down the road. You can't keep kicking a can forever. At some point, the can will fight back, okay? The can will be like, yo, there are gonna be rocks in the can, and you try to kick it, and it's gonna hurt your foot, okay?
As many decades as it's been a growing threat. We've passed the Neville Chamberlain moment.
Okay,
totally, it's just total bullshit. I mean, just listen, the reason
total bullshit. Zero logic. We can't think ahead. Like, it's bullshit. Oh, you want me to think 5 years in advance? About a threat that is not a threat right now? Well, don't you know that Iran loves us? I'm sorry, I think Dave just hates America. Straight up, I'm pretty sure Dave just hates America.
Now this 60% enrichment, which obviously for anyone paying attention was there is another reason besides they were developing a nuclear weapon, which again, all of the intelligence says they had not even made the political decision that they wanted to develop a nuclear weapon yet, let alone weren't doing it. It was a chip to bargain away, which is actually what they were trying to do. They were in the middle of negotiations when Israel snuck attacked them and launched this.
Hold up. You literally just made the point for her.
They had not even made the political decision that they wanted to develop a nuclear weapon yet, let alone weren't doing it. It was a chip to bargain away, which is actually what they were trying to do. They were in the middle of negotiations when Israel snuck attacked them.
Mm-hmm. Do you want somebody who chants death to America on a regular basis, hates you, everything you stand for? They're openly hostile, but they're not hostile, like actively hostile, okay? Do you want those guys to have a better bargaining chip or a worse bargaining chip? If you're the one bargaining with them. Do you want to come to a deal where you have less to offer? Yeah, where you have less leverage, not to offer, where you have less leverage? I feel like if you want to go to a deal intentionally, like you are not forced into a deal, you want to come to the table, you want to make a deal, don't you think it's better if you have more leverage? And if you think it's better, then you don't agree with Dave. And if you think it's not better, then I think, just like Dave, you hate America.
That means you concede. Yeah, hang on. That means you concede that what they were doing was creating the impression that they were going to build a nuclear bomb.
Oh, listen, there's no question that they upped the enrichment. But listen, here's the point. They weren't allowed to, under the JCPOA.
They weren't allowed to. Oh, they weren't allowed to. No, you cannot. We forbid it. We forbid.
Okay. Under the JCPOA, when America was involved, they weren't allowed to enrich to this level, but they were allowed to do it if America pulled out. That's in the JCPOA agreement. And so when Donald Trump tore that up, and walked away, they brought their enrichment up. What were the negotiations, Pierce, that were happening?
I don't care the reason for them. So I don't care like them being allowed to or not. I care about why they think that they should. Like, why do you think, from a perspective of America, that you should allow them to do so? That is the question. I don't care if they're allowed to. It's like, the legality of it matters like very fucking little. The reason that they're doing it, if you're an American, why the fuck do you think they should do it? That is as an American, that's the only thing. Sorry, not even American. As somebody who lives in the Western world, right? Why do you think that Iran should be allowed to do it? When everyone agrees, everyone, by the way, but when I say everyone, I mean everyone, okay? Russia agrees, China agrees, all of EU agrees, fucking probably like some bomb in like some village somewhere that like doesn't have a cell, like doesn't have like any technology there. He agrees that Iran shouldn't have a nuclear.
Before Israel launched their surprise attack. It was for Iran to bring the enrichment back down and America to get back in some type of agreement. They weren't going to call it the JCPOA because Donald Trump would have had to make it his own thing. And
Trump gave them 60 days to negotiate. Trump said he got 60 days, and day 61, Israel attacked.
Right. Okay. Now, but what happened, and this was widely reported, and Donald Trump himself acknowledged this, is that the hawks insisted that you put a poison pill in the negotiations. This is what Mark Levin was freaking out about, and that the standard has to be that Iran must give up all nuclear enrichment altogether. This was always a poison pill, so that the point is that Iran was willing to negotiate. And so, if you really wanted to get back into that deal, Donald Trump honestly just never should have torn up the JCPOA, and we'd all be in a much better situation. It ushered in a new.
Oh, I shouldn't have something 7 years ago. Okay, sure, whatever. Okay, that was a mistake. Let's say, right? That was a mistake. Okay, why do you think, even though, yeah, he tore it, why do you think it's good for America? Like, answer, this is the only question he should answer. Why do you think it is good for America if Iran develops its uranium? Forget nuclear weapons, develops its uranium to, like, those high levels. What, like, how is it good for the US?
New inspection regime, and so we know this is why we know that they're enriching up to 60% because they're still in the agreement and they still have the inspections. Unlike Israel.
Let me ask you this. I'm sure since you know about the JCPOA.
Unlike Israel. I'm sorry, Israel. is Israel a threat to fucking nuke anyone? And again, yeah, okay, like, oh, it's not right that Israel has it. Sure, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't change the fact of Iran. Deal with one problem at a time. I don't know why you're trying to deal with two problems here. Israel, by the way, is an ally of the US. US has probably no threat from Israel using its nuke on US. Even if Israel were to use its nuke, it would very unlikely affect the US directly. Okay? Iran would likely affect the US directly. And by the way, the main fight of Iran is not even with the US. It is with Israel. So it's like most of the shit that is happening in Iran to prevent the nukes is done by Israel. Yeah, the little bit, the bunker busters was the US, because they're the only ones capable of doing it as far as I understand. Other than that,
POA, I'm sure you know that it was replete with sunset provisions for up to 10 to 15 years, where all of those containment would be expired, and they would have more than $150 billion to continue developing their missiles and nuclear programs. It was never, the JCPOA was never a solution. Not only that, but not only did they inherit more than $100 billion, they were also able to expand their regional terror. And Khamenei repeatedly came on television and said, we are going to use that money to fund our allies. So there was actually a backdoor to the JCPOA where the regime, the Islamic Republic, was able to expand its regional influence and fund its allies, which eventually led to October 7th, which eventually brought on.
And again, by the way, Torah, not Torah, don't know if it's good or bad, but the whole point of that deal was kick the can down the road. That deal would have expired at some point, even if Trump didn't tear it, that deal would have expired at some point. Okay? That is again, are we kicking this can down the road, or are we dealing with the fucking issue? The issue is not going to be easier to deal with the longer this goes on. Okay, like straight up, right? The longer this goes on, the issue would be harder to deal with overall.
Us to where we are now. So yes, the JCPOA did intend to temporarily constrain their nuclear ability.
See that?
The Republic was able to expand its regional influence and fund its allies, which eventually led to October 7th, which eventually brought us to where we are now. So yes, the
eye roll. The eye roll. Oh my God, he just doesn't agree with anything.
JCPOA did.
This is why I said the beginning of the previous video at this point. I said, Dave, his ego is so inflated that even if he's proven wrong, he would never admit wrong, because his ego just got so fucking inflated because he became a spokesperson for something. Right? He became like a fucking figurehead for something. Okay? Probably first time in his life, which is fine. Whatever. Everyone has their shot. Right? But his ego is so inflated. And you can see it like every time he has a smug look on his face. Every fucking time. Right? It's like, whatever you say, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm right, even if I'm wrong. He has a smug fucking face. This is a very punchable face, I'm just saying. I wouldn't punch him. I'm like, I don't punch people just because they look smug. But this is a very punchable face. Like, if he does MMA, I'm sure the guy who's practicing against him is very happy. Okay.
To temporarily constrain their nuclear abilities, but it was always understood that by the time it expired, they would be $150 billion richer, their proxies would be fortified, they would have been responsible for significant regional destabilization, and then they would be able to enrich if they wanted to. And the only way to prevent that was to get into another nuclear deal, which would require unfreezing hundreds and billions of more. So they
more money. Yeah, you just keep helping them. You kick the can down the road, pay them more money to stop it. They get richer, and then once the deal is over, well, now we have more money and we can do it again. It's like, oh, you want to stop us? At some point, they would have too much money to the point where they're like, you know what? Like, we don't need any more money. I mean, like, what can you offer next? Like, we don't need any more money. Can you just give us Israel at this point?
Would just keep getting enriched, rich and empowered. So the question is, how does this end? Just a lifetime of JCPOAs?
Well, let me ask you a question just to end this, because we've run out of time. Dave, hang on. Let me put a question to Dave, which is that if it turns out that all this activity in the last 2 weeks drives Iran to the negotiating table, they do agree to give up a lot of their enriched uranium and so on, reduce it back to civilian levels and so on, and there is a period of sustained peace in the region, and the Gaza hell is brought to an end as well, and in 6 months' time, all this is over. Should Donald Trump get the Nobel Peace Prize? Because Barack Obama got one 8 months into his tenure for basically just doing a bit of fancy chat about world peace.
Well, I guess grading on
I don't care about the Nobel Peace Prize. Who gives a shit? Like, realistically, it doesn't make any sense. Anyways, yeah, to this point, honestly, like, again, I'm not gonna. I think Dave hates the U.S. or it likes the enemies of the U.S. more than it likes the U.S. and its allies. Now I get it. He doesn't view Israel an ally of the U.S. Sure, okay. Clearly, Iran is a better ally to the U.S. than Israel could ever dream of being. That's why we are the U.S. is bombing Iran. Okay, bombed Iran and destroyed nuclear facilities supposedly. Right, like that is why. Yeah, because Iran is a better ally to the US. What can you say about this guy? It's like an idiot who thinks he's smarter than everyone. That's pretty much it.